All right, so this is my review for Hood of Horror, which came out in 2006. It's pretty early while I'm recording this, barely past 5 a.m., so that's why it's so dark in here. I watched this on Tubi, so that probably goes to show the kind of quality we're dealing with here. But Hood of Horror is an anthology of horror, if you could really truly call it that, stories that are supposed to take place in like urban settings, kind of, sort of. The dialogue as a whole is laughably bad, obviously written by people that know nothing about AAVE, or the speech patterns basically of the black communities in America. The whole idea is basically this whole movie. It feels weird calling it a movie, but it's a movie. I guess you would say is sort of like sponsored or headed by Snoop Dogg. He's kind of like the narrator. I'll get into that in a second, though. I wondered, though, who the intended audience was for this when I watched it, because it's very obviously out of touch with anyone that isn't a WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Much of the dialogue reminds me of a fan fiction that you'd come across when, you're in high school. It's like a high school fan fiction, basically. It's very cliched and unoriginal. The film honestly kind of surprised me because it just starts. It just started with no real explanation. It begins animated and someone who turns out to be Snoop Dogg, or Snoop Dogg's character, is seen mourning over his sister who was accidentally shot. Snoop's character bargains with the demon to bring his sister back, but basically at the cost of his own life. Snoop then agrees to bring anyone similar like him or similar to him to the Hood of Horror. And from there, the next three stories begin, but they're live action. So the first story is Crossed Out, a tale about a girl named Posey that gains the power to kill whoever's graffiti tag that she crosses out with spray paint. She's bestowed this gift from Satan, supposedly, as she says in the dialogue, who is portrayed by Danny Trejo. He gives her a tattoo on her right arm to symbolize the gift. Surely, Posey is a nod towards the popular childhood sing-song rhyme, if you could call it that, Ring Around the Posey, which, unrelated fact, Ring Around the Posey was actually a song about the Black Death. This is something I read about when I was like in fifth grade. But anyway, so in this story, in the movie, the story of Posey, you see a flashback about how her mother is killed by her own father. Posey was a child when this happened, and the little child actress they used for Posey looks nothing like the character who plays her as an adult. I had to take a minute to realize that the child in the memory was supposed to be the main character. They look nothing alike. They look nothing alike. I don't know if that was done for comedic purposes or what, but I was like, this is not anywhere near the same. So then her dad paints Rip, R.I.P., into the head of her mother and says, "See, baby girl, it's like your finger paints." I mean, the audacity. The audacity there. That was like so funny to me. It was stupid. Stupid and funny. So the first guy that I guess you could say she kills, he dies when he accidentally shoots himself in the pants. And then when the second guy dies, Posey says, "What a waste of beer." And then she sneers. And I rolled my eyes because not only was the line just so terrible, the actress was so monotone and terrible, it made me hate it even more. Now, obviously, the dialogue is written to be very stock and cheesy like this, but it doesn't help either that majority of the actors and actresses in the entire movie with all the stories, it's like I'm not sure if these people just couldn't act or if they were instructed not to act, because the acting for majority of these actual characters was bad throughout the entire movie. You could tell that there were some actors and actresses, very few, like three, maybe four, that actually put in some effort. Skipping ahead a bit, the guy that plays another character, Roscoe, who is from Ghostbusters, actually. I mean, he, I think, did pretty well, but that's few and far between. So back to Posey's story. The third guy dies when he gets strangled by a telephone cord in a telephone booth, showing, of course, how something like that can never happen today because we don't have telephone booths anymore, right? But just as I was thinking, though, if she does this to other people, wouldn't other people be able to do this back to her? You know, I mean, if she were to tag, graffiti tag something somewhere in the city, couldn't somebody X her out too? So Posey is then seen tagging a wall with her name, and of course it looks like shit. And then Danny Trejo appears, and he chastises her for ruining a blank canvas because it was just this big white wall. And he chastises her for tagging a wall instead of creating real art, which I know is kind of like a thing within the graffiti community. A lot of people are like, why are you just tagging shit? Like, at least make it look good. But anyway, so Danny Trejo then summons the undead versions of the guys that died earlier in the story, and one of them smashes a bottle through her skull, like literally. And the makeup effects here were really crazy because they were able to, like, even though it was really stupid because they made the head look bigger just to fit the bottle through the head. I mean, they had blood spurting through it. I was like, my God. And then later, a giant painting of Red Posies is unveiled on a wall, and it's claimed that Posey had to move on to the community, the blood presumably making up the painting, Posey's blood. Snoop Dogg then appears and he pulls an eye out, likely Posey's eye, out of the wall, and then Posey joins the Hood of Horror. And then the second story is The Scum Lord. This is a terrible story about a stereotypical racist Texan is supposed to live in the same house as his father's black tenants / old Vietnam War buddies for a year in order to get his father's inheritance. The idea was stupid because, for one, why didn't any of the men have their own place with a VA loan? I mean, technically, but that's getting too far in the weeds already. And I mean, I just wrote this jokingly, but it's kind of like, were they really just roommates, right? Roommates. Anyway, it's revealed that the Texan, I don't even remember the guy's name, because it's like just not even important, really. So the main character, the Texan guy, is revealed that he actually killed his father drunk driving one day, impaling his father on a horned license plate, of the car he was driving. And the stereotypes are off the wall in the story. Obviously, it was supposed to be played up to be funny, but it quickly becomes insufferable. What could have been used to make good jokes was just cliche after cliche of Texas is racist. And it was clearly a story that was written by somebody that has never spent more than a week, if that, in the state. So there's nothing about HEB or Bluebell or Blue Bonnets or even tacos. None of that's ever mentioned. It's just terrible Southern accents, cowboy hats, and Confederate flag underwear. If they wanted to make it believable, they could have at least made the Texan's girlfriend a thick Latina that makes tacos. Come on. The more the story went on, the less interested in it I became. I actually ended up just scrolling through Instagram at one point, and I nearly turned the movie off because I was like, you know what, this really fucking sucks. Like, I don't even care about finishing it. I was like, I'll just forego the review and just move on with my life. But I don't know, just let it play long enough. I was like, it'll end eventually. So I couldn't stand the stereotypes on both sides for the black and white characters. The military stereotype of, on top of that, of veterans always talking like they're in war, made the story, of course, even harder to finish. What was really shocking about this one, once again, we encounter somebody's thinly disguised fetish. The Texan's girlfriend is seen tied up in their bed at some point, her stomach bloated, as she had been force fed majority, if not all, of the caviar in the room. She on top of that, she has gas. So I hate even like bringing this up, but this is what happens in the movie. She's tied up, her stomach is bloated, and she's fucking farting. She just keeps farting. And it's like supposed to be funny. And I'm like, maybe I'm just not the right person for this type of humor. But I was like, no, this is a fetish. This is a fetish. Because then they put a gas mask on her character and they force feed her more caviar until her stomach gets bigger and bigger until it literally bursts. And when I saw this scene, I had my hands over my face. I was like this, like, oh my God. Because I was so shocked that this fetish was so blatantly put in the film. I was like, this is a fetish. 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 This is a fetish. They just put it in there. Men force feeding women is a fetish, and that is what that scene was about. So I was shocked that this was just able to fly. That was able to fly in there. And I was like, please let this fucking end. And so then not long after, the Texan who's like tied up in the chair watching this is sent backwards down the stairs, and his neck is punctured on something, like pretty much impaled. And of course he dies, and then Snoop Dogg shows up and he takes his head to the hood of horror along with the girlfriend's disemboweled looking body. And there's a little bit of shit after that, and it's like, haha, he like shoots a chihuahua, but then the story pretty much ends. So the third and final story in the movie is actually by far the best one. Though it still has its own caveats, still cheesy, still has really bad acting. But the best one is this one. It's called Rhapsody Askew. And it's about a rapper. It begins with this rapper who is seen praying in a church to God about finding his calling and promising to thank the Lord if he makes it big. So the rapper, his rap name is Sod. I think it's supposed to be in all caps, S-O-D. Sod, he meets a guy named Quan, and they become like a duo. And you kind of see this like quick sort of montage of how they sort of rise up, just as a quick background. And quickly you see that Sod makes it big. And before an award ceremony, he is like stopped by Snoop Dogg's character who asks him for an interview. And Sod, is like, ugh, no. And he walks off. And so Snoop Dogg's character, who of course is like not the type of person you really want to double cross or something like that, it's like, okay, I'll get back at him, right? So as punishment for that, Sod ends up having to face himself with the, I guess, manager lady of the building, or so she's supposed to be. And she forces him to watch footage of himself and the way he's acted in his life. Which I will say, that plot idea, I think is really good. I know there's other like movies and stories that are like that. And isn't that kind of like what the one Christmas story from Charles Dickens kind of like that too? So I do like that kind of concept when it comes to stories and movies like that. So, of course, it turns out that Sod is a terrible person, legitimately a really terrible person, having, of course, used his fame to do things like have intercourse with minors and not even feeling bad about it. One line from the character even has him say that he urinated on this girl. And because of this time period, which this movie came out in 2006, I do really wonder if this was supposed to be a reference to R. Kelly. So on top of that, turns out that Sod, what do you know, has a huge ego. And of course, his fame is actually due to Quan and Quan's smart business decision. So, in one piece of footage, Quan was actually offered a solo deal by a character that was played by Jason Alexander. And Jason Alexander dons this terrible British accent that was really hard to even understand. But, of course, Quan like saved Sod's ass because Sod, with his huge ego, almost blew like this record deal that they could have had. And then later on, turns out that Quan was killed in a shooting when he and Sod randomly decide to go to a bodega one night. But then it's revealed that Quan was set up, and the shooting was, of course, actually a hit from Sod himself. And the person that shot Quan was Sod's bodyguard. Once again, I'm like, that the idea to this story, I think, is really good. So the manager then allows someone into the room, and of course, it's the undead corpse of Quan. And he starts to mess around with Sod. It gets a little gross with some of the effects. And of course, Sod loses his mind. So his bodyguard, the same one that shot Quan, which this is where it's revealed the bodyguard is the person that shot him. He comes into the room and he like round up two girls for Sod to sleep with. And Sod instead starts freaking out because he's like, "Don't you see him? Don't you see him, man?" And his bodyguard is like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see anything." Because the bodyguard can't see Quan. So, thinking that he is stabbing Quan in the eyes, Sod turns out to have taken like these two glass shards and he stabbed his bodyguard in the stomach, killing him. And so the girls who were rounded up, they were taken to the room, they see this and they run away screaming. And Sod then dies in a shootout with the police. And the movie then ends with Snoop Dogg taking all the characters who died in the stories to the Hood of Horror. It's a silly ending with some serious elements, but overall, I didn't really care for the movie that much. Each story, apparently according to the credits, had different writers, but it still somehow ended up with these similar bad styles. The best story to me, of course, was the last one. I could actually see this working as a separate movie on its own if it was fleshed out properly. And I'm sure, I really believe there's already a movie like that out there somewhere. I can't recommend the movie though. It was pretty hard to get through. That second story was like really bad. If you watch this, I wouldn't even bother watching the second one. I'll put it that way. If you really want to subject yourself to this, just skip the second story. Don't even bother. There's a lot of early 2000s movie tropes in it, such as like the over sharpness of the details, the barely edgy quote unquote attitude. Is that even in the camera shot? I can't see. Attitude that is still safe for mom. And of course, the overuse of sepia, I say sepia, the overuse of the sepia filters. Many of the things that I hated about the films from this time period are in this, such as the interest in non-Anglo-Saxon cultures, if I'm going to just put it like that, yet not wanting to accept the nuances within them. I know that this wasn't supposed to go out there and change the world, but I have a hard time enjoying pieces of media that really only keep people back, It just has this very small-minded, immature way of presenting humor. So I give this movie 1 star and 2 slimes. 2.